Na jaw ti kan mu de da do bi presi wa se won ti mensi
make me sis me sire why na me yifa na treche wo o jari malaria din ya chisa
e da kan akoma 2 years so onom dank proker herba mixture osi simbadu say from oyire so doctor ka chene say o malaria mo ani bi oni pedue mu a so onom dank antima x yare malaria ebe kokora obi wo hono ma ne yem ye ne yanso a so onom dank gastro care herba mixture oho beton dank phyto care herba mixture koko ebe ye hu adwuma ma wapono waposo ohu tutu dank extra care herba mixture obenya hoden ne watimi anante make food dank no nyina e de amamo
na ebenya dwedwe nya bi we
pharmacy shop and a herbal shop also per dank no a ye be ma obi
pacho mo number ye sen
0266593330
enroi oba pemfo oba ma akora nufo ani akora woni mfie du mienu ntime no FDA ahwehwe sa edwadie nkrato mu agya atom se eye.
Sadly midday, and you're welcome to Pan-African News Radio on Pan-African Television. We're coming to you from our studios in Abilinkwe 48 Swanika Street here in Accra. My name is Justice Appiah. Let me remind you that we are streaming live on Facebook at Pan-African Television. We are live on YouTube at Pan-African Television. Now, let's move on quickly to our top stories for this afternoon. Food Sovereignty Ghana, FSG, calls on government for amendment of Plant Breeders Bill. President Dankwa Akufo-Addo announced his commencement of religious activities. Later in business, Prudential Bank appoint Muriel Susan Eduse as new board chairperson. Details of these stories, including sports, international, and entertainment, will come your way for the next 1 hour. We're going for a short break. We'll be back shortly. Now, moving on to our very first story for this afternoon. Communications Director of Food Sovereignty Ghana, FSG, Edwin Kweku-Ando, has called on government to consider the interest of small-scale farmers before signing the proposed Plant Breeders Bill. Speaking to Pan-African News after a presentation to the Registrar General's Department and the Ministry of Food and Agriculture in Accra, he said the Plant Breeders Bill in the current form does not benefit the Ghanaian farmer, hence the need for its amendment. Mr. Ando indicated that there must be a clear benefit sharing scheme to benefit farmers in the country.
We have reiterated our issues. We've reiterated the issues we've always had since 2013 when Food Sovereignty Ghana first came upon this proposed Plant Breeders Bill, that there were certain aspects of the bill which were not enduring to the benefit of the small-scale farmer. We had issues with the fact that farmers' rights were going to be eroded, especially when Ghana is a signatory to the WTO agreement, and under the TRIPS agreement, and then the ITGPRA, which is an international treaty for plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. Those two international treaties protect the Ghanaian farmer to be able to save and exchange seeds. And this new UPOV regime, which the government of Ghana wants to sign on, is one of the most rigid and inflexible plant variety protection systems that exist. In fact, we've drawn attention to government that there are countries like India, Malaysia, and Philippines who did not go the UPOV way and have developed what they call a sui generis system, which is a system that is suitable to your specific conditions as a country. This is something which is afforded Ghana under the international law, and we're wondering why Ghana didn't look at that before wanting to sign on to something which is rigid and inflexible. Because it has to do with intellectual property, and then intellectual property, at the end of the day, it boils down to the commercial value, the commercial potentials that can be derived from these products. Then you see the financial dimension in these things. And we are saying that, fine, there's a natural interest when corporations develop interest in anything, but we have to remember the interest of the small-scale farmer, who is the majority of Ghanaians. You know, AC and Kwabena, who are Salaga and Kufredua, who are developing these plants on their farms. How would such a plant breeders bill in its current form benefit them compared to developing the opportunity for the large players to come into Ghana and benefit from such a framework which exists already? In fact, the head of Africa for Monsanto about 2 years ago remarked concerning the Nyankpala Research Institute, where they were researching on genetically modified cotton, that, you know, they had to pull out of Nyankpala because the Burkina Faso disaster with GM cotton, they could see that they were going to hit the same wall. But this head of Monsanto Africa said something very critical that we should listen to, and he says that Monsanto would be prepared to come back to Ghana if the right framework exists. The kind of right framework which would protect Monsanto's interests if it was going to come back into Ghana and dabble in genetically modified cotton is exactly the sort of UPOV compliant regime that exists today. So we are saying that we should think far, we should think about the future, we should realize what the world is going through now, and that the value of our biodiversity has more value than we have rated it today. We should think of our seeds as you know, files of information which is empowering, and that will help us appreciate the value for biodiversity even in a digital age like we're living in. So you think that the seeds and the forests, no, those are high. That's why now it takes millions of dollars to provide funding to be able to even tamper with the seed. How much more the actual creation of that rare seed. And these seeds mostly belong to communities. We're saying communities develop these seeds over the years. So there must be a clear benefit sharing scheme. You know, you come to Ghana, you take Alunguntungu or our version of soursop. If you're able to develop into something, just the same way they want to criminalize farmers and make sure that they pay royalties, we want to see a good system in place which guarantees those communities that save those seeds and develop those seeds over the centuries to get compensation.
Now, away from that, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has declared the commencement of religious activities with effect from June 5, 2020. In his 10th televised address to the nation, he authorized the opening of churches, mosques, and other religious bodies to ensure that congregants do not exceed more than 100 and strict adherence to social distancing protocols.
Fellow Ghanaians, I know, however, that we cannot live with these restrictions forever, and that is, it is imperative we find a safe way to return our lives to normality, as other nations across the globe are trying to do. This has informed the stakeholder consultations that have occurred over the last few weeks with entities in the health, labor, religious, chieftaincy, educational, hospitality, transport, sports, tourism, and creative arts sectors. These consultations have hinged on an analysis of the data gathered and the adoption of best practices and experiences of other countries that have attempted to move on in the wake of the pandemic. A consensus has emerged from these consultations that we should embark on a strategic, controlled, progressive, safe easing of restrictions to get our lives and economy back to normal. As I stated in my May Day address a month ago, I'm now in a position to outline the roadmap for easing safely the restrictions. Ours is going to be a phased approach involving a selected list of public gatherings based on their risk profile, socioeconomic impact, and most importantly, our capacity to enforce and to respond in the event of a flare-up in our number of infections. So, fellow Ghanaians, With effect from Friday, 5th June, we will begin stage 1 of the process of easing restrictions. An abridged format for religious services can commence. 25% attendance with a maximum number of 100 congregants can worship at a time in church or at the mosque, with a mandatory 1 meter rule of social distancing between congregants. In addition to the mandatory wearing of masks for all persons at all times in churches and mosques, a register of names and contact details of all worshippers and hand-washing facilities and sanitizers must be provided, with a maximum duration of 1 hour for each service. Religious institutions that are desirous of opening their premises to their members, such as churches, mosques, and others, must disinfect, fumigate, and put in place the requisite logistics needed to guarantee safe opening and operationing. They must work with the designated regulatory bodies and undertake test runs of the protocols I have outlined. I would appeal to them, in the case of Christians, on the first Sunday of reopening, i.e. 7th June, in the case of the Adventists, Saturday, 6th June, and in the case of Muslims, on the first Friday, i.e. Salat al-Jum'ah, on 5th June, to dedicate their worship to prayers for the nation in these challenging times. The Minister for Religious Affairs will outline in detail the specific guidelines for the safe reopening of our churches and mosques.
Still on the President's address to the nation, President Dankwa Akufo-Addo has also directed that educational institutions be reopened for resumption of lectures and classes to enable final year students as well as pupils to prepare adequately for their exit exams slated for this year. According to him, tertiary institutions are to resume on June 15, senior high schools on June 22, and junior high schools on June 29, 2020.
Fellow Ghanaians, from Monday, 15th June, the decision has been taken after engagement with the teacher unions, whose cooperation I salute, to reopen schools and universities to allow for final year, junior high, senior high, and university students to resume classes ahead of the conduct of their respective exit examinations. Indeed, final year university students are to report to their universities on 15th June. Final year senior high school SHS3 students, together with SHS2 Go Track students, on 22nd June. And final year junior high school JHS3 students on 29th June. JHS3 classes will comprise a maximum of 30 students. SHS classes a maximum of 25 students. And university lectures will take place with half the class sizes. All final year students of educational and training institutions, which are being managed by ministries other than the Education Ministry, are to return to school on 15th June to complete their exit examinations. Again, prior to the opening of schools and universities, the Ministry of Education and the heads of public and private educational institutions will fumigate and disinfect their institutions. Each student, teacher, and non-teaching staff will be provided with reusable face masks by the Ministry of Education. With the avoidance of doubt, all other educational facilities, private and public, for non-final year students will remain closed. The Minister for Education in the coming days will outline in detail the specific guidelines for the safe reopening of our schools and universities. Private burials, now with a maximum of 100 persons, can continue to be performed. Restaurants, providing seated service, the National Commission for Civic Education and the National Identification Authority, whose activities were exempted from the outset from these restrictions, must conduct their activities in accordance with social distancing and the necessary hygiene and safety protocols. Whilst we step up public education of the protocols and public gatherings, let me also state the regulatory agencies will undertake random checks to ensure conformity with these rules, and the security services will be tasked to enforce them. Should any institution fail to adhere to these directives, its activities will be immediately prohibited and relevant sanctions applied. I have by executive instrument provided for these new directions and extended the suspension of the remaining
COVID-19 situation. Some residents in the Bono East region have expressed fear after it emerged that the region has recorded its first case of the deadly coronavirus. The residents, who say the news came as a surprise, want stricter measures to be put in place on the issue of COVID-19 in the metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies.
According to some residents, most of them were initially complacent with the protocols, but that position has been revised following the announcement that the region has recorded a case. Expressing their fears in an interview, they revealed that they will abide by the safety protocols in full, since it is now clear that it is no more a mirage.
In fact, Bono East recording one case, it's something that has put us all on our toes, because initially we thought it wouldn't come here, but now it's here. And initially, although I was taking very good care of myself in terms of abiding by the protocols and everything, this time it has, my attitude towards it has changed, because I've seen that now it's around, and even it's closer to us right here in Yeji. So now I'm a radio presenter, which sometimes when I go to the studio, although we go by the social distancing protocols and all that, this time we are taking very strict precautions.
Mete say Bro is ya recorded your first case. In fact, me go pa ena I feel me say yade no real, because ne yatete no so many social media platforms say yade na wo ho, but na me and you bet me figures amanfo awu recoveries yatete, but ene hu say ye recorded first case. In fact, Bro is like edi hu bi abai am after so my I say measures you to the virus is real. Now you best say some measures number for their to community, people should follow and abide by it. Say the way you make medicine. In fact, Bro is news media. We are very shocked, and I feel you say you it's very, very real.
COVID-19 ya record here, Bro is in fact. Why they must see a part they are paying. First net to send everybody in here. That on millions and then the assistant or having a lapay. Yarea do and then the money who crack the CNSA. Bro is a food basket of Ghana. I got the 4 bar up and down, but we are the end year to the 300 years. Since in France, so they are good vegetable season. I feel the Bible to Punk California. You are not planning that I say for the 90 years that came to Bro East. Yes, and Ghana said it was your train. What 3 cents, and since you are banning, all you as also you smoke a sea pass, let travel better near, you know. In fact, you
Now, leader and founder of the Oppositional People's Congress, Dr. Hassan Ayega, has withdrawn his support for the Electoral Commission in compiling a new voters register for the election 2020, saying the timing for the exercise was ill-conceived. He is also concerned with government decision to support the Electoral Commission to compile a new voters register, he urged government to reconsider its position on the issue or face the consequences.
The decision to compile a new voters roll has stirred considerable controversy, with the political parties and civil society divided over its prudence and timeliness. However, the Director of Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission, Dr. Seribo Okweku, says his outfit is going ahead with its program and will announce a commencement date soon. The decision seemed not to have sat well with the leader and founder of the opposition All People's Congress, Dr. Hassan Ayariga, who has threatened to sue Parliament if it approves the current CI bill into law.
The current voter register that we have is a credible one. It has been used to elect two different presidents, from President Nana Addo, President Mahama, and unit committee election, and subsequently the creation of regions. One cannot say such a register is not credible. We are clear. At the last IPAC meeting which I attended, I asked the question of whether the current voter register was credible or not. The EC couldn't answer. All they said that they wanted to do some upgrades. Now, with the decision at the last IPAC meeting, we still ask several questions. According to them this time, they've sent a CI to Parliament, and they are waiting for Parliament to approve the CI so that they could use the NIA card and the Ghana card for the registration. And we were opposed. We were saying that, look, in the last IPAC meeting, I personally asked that question, whether we could, the EC will be able to use 43 days to compile the voter register. And I told them, by my calculations, it is impossible to use 43 days to compile a register of 18 million Ghanaians. Because looking at the number of days they gave, the number of minutes, I did my calculation and realized that with something like facial recognition, you will need more time for uploading, taking of pictures, prints of fingerprints, all right? The dates must be collected. Then you have to save it, you have to crop it before you upload it. So it will take a minimum of 10 to 15 minutes.
Still on the local front, the Eastern Regional Police Command have vowed that they would not allow any miscreant who foment trouble to have their way during this year's elections. In an interview, the Koforidua Central Police Commander, who doubles as the Acting Regional Director of Operations, Superintendent Raymond Kofi Ezra, admonished Ghanaians to desist from veering into political vigilantism and violence to plunge the country into anarchy.
22 elections. The police, we are resolved to ensure that we maintain law and order, and we are not going to sit down concerned and allow miscreants, the troublemakers, this vigilante, to create problems for the country. We are over 30-something million, and just few people. In fact, generally Ghanaians are peaceful. They are respectful, they obey the law. We only find few people because of their stomach or for whatever reasons who are creating trouble. So we want to sound a word of caution to the would-be troublemakers that they should make sure that they don't create problem. The police will not sit down for anybody to create problem for the police. That is one. Number two, I want to plead with the journalists that let's be circumspect in our reportage. Let's be professional in our reportage. Let's take opportunity to also educate the general public, either on the electoral laws, or we'll talk about the Vigilante Act, the Vigilantism and the other offenses or related offenses act. So that they get the surprise, because if they get you arrested, you are going to be fined and jailed because somebody wants to go to parliament or somebody wants to get political appointment. So please help the public. Let's educate the public so that together there will be peace in the country before, during, and then after the election. So that by the time we finish the election, we'll have a full country, everything is intact, which we believe, which the police have resolved to do. The Bible says that for lack of knowledge, my people perish, not for lack of paying tithes or for lack of prayer or lack of fasting. It says for lack of knowledge, my people perish. So let's have the knowledge, let's educate the public about the electoral laws, about Vigilante and other Related Offences Act, and all laws related to election, so that we go by the law, because we are there to enforce the law. The police is there to enforce the law. And we use force to enforce the law. Minimum force, reasonable force, allowed by the law.
Now, Chief Executive Officer of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Dr. Daniel Asari, has revealed his readiness to proceed on retirement after serving his term as the head of medical facility. He further reiterated that the call for his resignation did not come as a conducive time as staff of the hospital are spearheading efforts to fight against COVID-19 in the country.
His comment follows earlier reports of staff at the Kolebu Teaching, mostly senior ones, calling for his immediate resignation. According to the workers, the Chief Executive Officer has reached the public sector retirement age of 60 years per his details at the Social Security and National Insurance Trust (NET), which states he was born on May 31, 1960. But Dr. Daniel Asari, whose appointment as the CEO of Kolebu Hospital ends in September 2020, said he does not mind going on pension if President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo or the board chair of the health facility appoints a successor. He indicated that those agitating for the termination of his appointment must exercise restraint, adding that the new appointee may experience some difficulty if the transition is sudden.
Until a new person comes or my contract is extended, it will be inappropriate on our part to exit the seat, especially when we are at the forefront. And I think it's logical and it's something, no matter what somebody who thinks that even if he comes, he cannot perform this role we are doing now. He needs to warm up. And we cannot... So the transition cannot just be immediate? No, you can't. Especially when we are in crisis. You don't do that. Obey the Minister for Health. Minister for who says that stay on until appropriate the appointing authority directs to do this or that. And I think I'm an obedient servant. So that matter, and nobody can change his date. Nobody can change my date. Even though my own appointment, I can show you. I'll show you a point. So, this is the bill that says about the board chairman should not be a minister or deputy minister. Yes. And this is my Senate. You can see the date 31st May. Controller, the date 31st May. Have you seen that? Yes, sir. Yes. And then I'll show you. So me, I'm ready to go on pension and do my own thing. I can show you my birth certificate. It's here. Isn't it how much? 31st? 31st May 1960. Simple. So no one, but the my appointment letter for something that I want to show you. So people should just be patient. Look at it here. I was appointed. Oh, this is not callable. It's Cape Coast. So I was appointed. The appointment is for 2 years. Your appointment takes effect from 3rd September. Look at the first. Yeah. And this one was signed by. Oh. The board chairman, Honorable Kube. So if you are appointed 1st September and your appointment is for 2 years, when is it expiring? September 2020. I am the one who is telling them that even though I have a contract for up to 2020, I'm 60 May. But it doesn't mean that your contract doesn't, you can go outside your contract, isn't it? So
now we'll be crossing over to the NDC headquarters to speak to my colleague Modya Ananinate, who is there covering the maiden edition of the weekly press conference held by the National Democratic Congress. Mod, if you can hear me, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us what is happening at the National Democratic Congress headquarters.
Oh, okay. So we just finished with our press briefing, and the press briefing is actually, according to President, which is the communication officer of the National Democratic Congress, said the briefing is an initiative to accord the NDC to give an opportunity to engage the media of the happenings in the country. And also, he also spoke about the fact that this initiative is really it's an initiative to kind of witness all the sectors of the nation in the last 3.5 years under the administration of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
Now, what are some of the issues actually raised in today's press conference?
Well, according to the agency, the initiative is actually created, or it's actually a platform to be able to play their role as a responsible opposition by objecting to the mismanagement of the affairs of the country, and also a responsible opposition seeking to mandate the people of this country and also demonstrate that they are better. I mean, the NDC are better off than the NPP government.
Honorable Kesel Atufo, former Deputy Minister of Finance, I believe, spoke. What did he say?
No, actually, it was actually focusing on the scale, what what Nana Addo tried promising the country during his campaign, that he was going to give $1 million to every constituency to be able to better up their game or their work. But due to that, I mean, he came up saying those things without paying much attention to it. He didn't really pay attention to it or fulfill his promises as he came saying. So that was the main thing the speaker was saying. We actually had 3 main speakers. At this time, we only had 2 speakers talking for the meeting or the conference. So we had, which is Kezia Forcing. He is the running member for the Financial Committee, and the second speaker who spoke also is Honorable Mubarak Mohammed Mutala. He is the member of parliament for the Asawa State and the Asante region of Ghana, and also the minority chief in Ghana's parliament.
All right, thank you so much, Maud, for that wonderful update on what is happening at the National Democratic Congress headquarters. If there's anything, we'll get back to you. But away from that, supporters of former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo and his political ally Charles Blé Condé are eagerly awaiting the return of the duo as the country readies for keenly awaited presidential elections. Gbagbo's travel restrictions from Belgium were lifted this week by the International Criminal Court, igniting talks of his return to the country.
Supporters said all was set to receive the former president. They further called for President Ouattara to lead a national reconciliation in the interest of peace in the West African nation. Gbagbo can leave Belgium under certain conditions, the International Criminal Court has said, following his acquittal last year over post-election violence that killed an estimated 3,000 people. Gbagbo, the first African head of state to stand trial in The Hague, and his deputy Charles Blakewood were cleared in early 2019 of crimes against humanity, 8 years after the arrest and arraignment before the court.
Now let's go to Namibia, where Namibia's President Godfred Geingob has admitted that he breached the country's coronavirus regulations after hosting a party to mark his political party's 60th anniversary. He has now fined all those who attended the illegal birthday bash.
Namibia's ruling party, the Southwest Africa's People's Organization, held a celebration on April 19, 2020, when the sparsely populated Southern African nation was under lockdown and gatherings were banned. The president said that less than 10 people attended, but those included the vice president, the prime minister, and party secretary general. All of the guests have been fined 2,000 Namibian dollars, the equivalent of about 110 euros. From official data, Namibia seems to have been extraordinarily successful in its effort to keep the coronavirus pandemic under control. The Namibian government was quick to react when it recorded its first cases of coronavirus on March 3rd in 2020 and closed its borders to international travel thereafter. The vast nation is roughly the same size as France, and England combined has just 2.5 million people. So far, it has recorded 23 cases of coronavirus and no deaths. However, this is not the first time the president has attracted controversy. He invited several African heads of state to his swearing-in ceremony in March, prompting them to breach their own travel bans. Botswana's president was forced to self-isolate for 14 days upon his return.
Now, Ethiopia has expressed shock at recent cross-border incursions along its common border with Sudan and has called for Sudanese authorities to allow for diplomacy to lead the search for an amicable solution. In a statement released recently, the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry expressed its deep sympathy and condolences to the families of the victims of both countries.
The statement came barely 24 hours after Sudan's Foreign Ministry said it summoned Ethiopia's diplomat to the country over a cross-border attack allegedly conducted by a militia backed by Ethiopia's military. The attack in the eastern province of Al-Qadarif killed at least one officer and one child, Sudan's military said in a statement. 7 Sudanese troops, including an officer, and 3 civilians also sustained wounds. Ethiopian farmers have 4 years planted crops in Sudan's Al-Faskar border area, but the government of former President Omar al-Bashir had tolerated the incursions. Sudanese transitional authorities, who took over after the military's ouster of al-Bashir last year amid months-long protests, have recently engaged in talks with Ethiopia to withdraw Ethiopian farmers behind Sudanese borders. A spokesman for the Sudanese military, Brigadier Amar Mohammed al-Hassan, said in the statement that a militia backed by Ethiopia's military attempted to take water from the Atbara River, setting off a heavy exchange of fire with Sudanese forces guarding the area. The militia retreated and then came back with a contingent from the Ethiopian military, and they attacked the Sudanese with machine guns, rifles, and rocket-propelled grenades. Sudan's foreign ministry urged Ethiopia's government to take necessary measures to stop these attacks. It said the violence came as both governments were preparing for a second round of talks in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, to solve the border dispute. Border tensions between the two countries have heated up recently with repeated attacks targeting Sudanese troops. General Abdel Fattah Burhan, head of Sudan's ruling Sovereign Council, toured the border area last month after an attack. Since the visit, Khartoum has deployed more troops to its eastern border with Ethiopia to stop incursions. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed later sent his military chief of staff Lieutenant General Adam Mohamed Mahmoud to Khartoum to meet with top Sudanese military and government officials in an effort to ease the tensions.
Now, authorities in South Africa have expressed worry over shortages of COVID-19 testing kits and reagents as cases consistently rise in the country and across the continent. About 1,000 people have not taken the coronavirus test in the Rainbow Nation.
According to the Health Ministry, priority is now given to patients admitted to hospital and health workers. Other African countries have also been hit by the widespread shortages of testing kits. However, some analysts believe the wealthier countries are knocking poorer countries out in the race to obtain crucial supplies. South Africa has, at May 2019, conducted more tests for the virus than any other country in Africa and had the most confirmed cases with nearly 28,000.
Local front, 7 frontline health workers have tested positive for the novel coronavirus disease, pushing Uganda's tally of confirmed cases to 417. The infected workers include 3 nurses, 2 doctors and 2 senior level staff, according to a statement released by the Ministry of Health on Sunday evening.
2 of the 7 workers are from Lira Regional Referral Hospital. Vadio, a lead nurse and medical officer, have been admitted at Entebbe Regional Referral Hospital, while the rest at Mulago Specialized Hospital. Entebbe Hospital Director Dr. Moses Mwanga says that the Lira Hospital staff are stable and under close monitoring. The hospital currently has 45 patients, most of whom are long-distance truck drivers. The ministry said that experts in infection, prevention and control, case management and psychosocial management are investigating the circumstances under which the frontline workers could have contracted the virus. However, Dr. Stephen Ayela, the Deputy President of Uganda Medical Association, hinted on inexperience and staffing shortfalls as possible leads for the infections at Lira Hospital. Total number of recoveries currently stands at 72. There have been no fatalities registered yet. Globally, over 22,000 health workers have been infected with COVID-19 in 52 countries by the end of last month.
You're still watching Pan-African News Radio on Pan-African Television. We're coming to you from our studios in Abilinkpe, 48 Swanika Street here in Accra. Up next is business. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now let's go and look at what is happening in the world of business. Prudential Bank Limited has appointed Muriel Susan Eduse as its new board chairperson. She succeeds Kwekwe J. Jemfi, who has retired after serving in that capacity for 12 years.
Muriel Susan Eduse, who brings extensive banking, finance, business, corporate governance and boardroom experience to her new role, worked with the National Investment Bank for 18 years from 1997, retiring as head of operations in 1995. She once chaired the board of Republic Bank and also served on other boards including Opportunity International Savings and Loans Company Limited, Ghana National Petroleum Corporation and Nestle Ghana Limited. An alumna of Wesley Girls High School, she bagged a Bachelor of Science degree in Administration in 1975 and a Master of Business Administration from the University of Ghana Business School in 1989. A Hubert Humphrey Fellow, she also undertook an MBA Finance and Banking non-degree awarding course at Boston University. She is also a Fellow of the Ghana Institute of Directors and previously served as a council member.
Now, gold output from the large-scale mining sector increased by 6% to 2.989 million ounces in 2019 from 2.807 million ounces in 2018, according to the annual report of the Ghana Chamber of Mines.
During this period, small-scale production decreased to 1.588 million ounces in 2019 from 1.98 million ounces in 2018. The 20% fall in the small-scale mining subsector resulted in an overall decline in total gold production to 4.577 million ounces in 2019 from 4.792 million ounces in 2018, Eric Esubonten, president of the chamber, said in the report during a virtual annual general meeting. The large-scale sector improved on its contribution to national gold production from 59% in 2018 to 65% in 2019, whereas the small-scale sector accounted for 35% of the national gold production in 2019, a decline from 41% in 2018. Meanwhile, the bulk mineral sector, manganese and bauxite, recorded 18% and 10% improvement in outputs respectively.
And finally, on the business front, a competitor analysis report released by the Export Promotion Authority points to new potential markets for Ghana's cassava starch industry. According to the report, such new markets, including Nigeria and European markets, notably Poland, Portugal, Italy, presents strong potentials for market diversification and penetration for Ghanaian companies and trade promotion organizations.
Interestingly, despite Ghana having huge existing market for cocoa derivatives, including chocolate, in the Nigerian market, the market share of Ghana's cassava starch industry in Nigeria, despite its proximity, currently remains 0%. In 2018, export of Ghana's cassava starch generated close to $1 million in revenue. However, the United States emerged as the largest importer of the product, with export value of $935,000, representing 95%, while the remaining, though marginal, was absorbed by the European Union market. In that same year, U.S. total imports of cassava starch amounted to $82.2 million, with Ghana emerging as the sixth largest supplier. As Ghana is making commitment to commence the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which seeks to increase intra-African trade from the current 12% of member countries' total international trade to 52% by 2023, Ghana Export Promotion Authority is admonishing exporters in the industry to target African countries such as Nigeria to increase their export sales.
Well, that's all for business. Up next is international news. Welcome back. Now let's do some international story. On May 29, Friday, Scotland's Ministry of Housing had issued a guideline for appropriate pandemic hygiene measures to all social landlords. The government had made such an intervention following the campaign by the members of the Tenants Union Living Rent from Glasgow neighborhoods demanding to restart the block cleaning operations that have been halted by the landlords in the Glasgow community during the period of lockdown.
The Tenants Union has initiated Hygiene Kills the Virus campaign in communities, demanding to resume cleaning activities in the Scottish neighbourhoods. On Friday, Living Rent has stated that since the beginning of the pandemic, people living in high-density housing across Scotland have faced vital block cleaning services being withdrawn from their communities by their landlords. All Living Rent members in this block have been organising to tackle the serious problem and the threat to their health it has posed. Today, we are delighted to announce that Housing Minister Kevin Stewart has done the right thing and issued clear guidance on appropriate pandemic hygiene measures to all social landlords. Living Rent social and council tenants have worked hard to document evidence, negotiate the reinstatement of cleaning with individual landlords, and pressure the Scottish Government to issue across-the-board guidance on how to keep tenants and cleaning workers alike safe during this public health crisis, added the Living Rent Group. The recently published government guidance states that it is essential that there is at least daily cleaning of touch points and deep cleaning of lifts and regular cleaning of stairwells. 2. There's the need to be clear and prominent posters instructing on one in the lift policy. 3. The need for social distancing, encouraged by clear markings. 4. Workers must be supplied with PPE as per government guidance. 5. Tenants must be informed of any change in service. The Living Rent Group has stated that the volunteers of the groups will now onwards make sure that the guidelines issued by the government are properly implemented by the landlords across Glasgow.
Credit to People's Dispatch for that international story. Up next is sports with Maxwell Woyram Tsigbe.